Have you ever tried to give advice to a really smart friend only to feel like you're talking to a brick wall? I mean, it's a super common frustration, right? Well, today we're going to unpack exactly why that happens. Let's get into this fascinating puzzle of why intelligent people can be so incredibly resistant to good advice. You see a clear solution, you offer up what you think is a genuinely helpful idea, and what you get back is, well, a ton of questions, skepticism, or maybe just a flat-out nope. It feels personal, doesn't it? But what if it's not about you at all? What if there's a completely different game being played inside their head? And this really sets up the whole conflict perfectly. On one hand, you have the usual suspects, right? The go-to labels, they're stubborn, arrogant, they've got a huge ego. That's the easy answer. But on the other side is the real reason, and has way less to do with their personality and, well, everything to do with their process. A deep-seated, fundamental need for logical proof. So let's start by exploring that common story, the one we automatically tell ourselves when our advice gets shot down. Is it really just a matter of arrogance?
Yeah, these labels probably sound super familiar. You might think, oh, they're just too proud to listen, or they're a classic know-it-all. Maybe they're emotionally closed off, or heck, maybe they just get a kick out of being contrarian. These are simple, easy snap judgments. And you know what? They're almost always wrong.
And here's the pivot. This is the big what if. What if you just challenge that first assumption? What if the resistance you're seeing isn't a character flaw at all? What if it's actually a sign of a highly active, really structured mind just doing its job? This brings us to the core idea, the real aha moment behind the whole thing. It's a preference for cold, hard evidence over simple, warm reassurance. This is what unlocks the whole mystery. The key concept here is what we call internal reasoning. As you can see, this isn't about rejecting things just for the sake of it. No, it's about rigorously, and I mean rigorously, stress testing them. Before a highly analytical person can even begin to accept your advice, they have to run it through their own internal system of logic to see if it actually holds water. So this is basically what that mental stress test looks like. First, they hear the advice. Then almost instantly, they start testing it against everything they already know, their own logical frameworks. They're actively poking it, looking for flaws, for gaps, for inconsistencies. And only after, and I mean only after, it passes this tough internal audit, do they decide, okay, is this a yes or a no? So, the most crucial takeaway is this. It is not just a preference. For them, it's a neurological need for evidence over reassurance. Let that sink in for a second. For this kind of mind, accepting advice without proof feels as deeply uncomfortable as walking a tightrope without a net. It literally goes against their wiring. You see, understanding this core need is the absolute key to changing the entire dynamic. It's about a mind that prioritizes pure logic, sometimes, yeah, even over loyalty to the person who's giving the advice. So often, when we give advice, what we're really asking for is trust. We say things like, hey, just trust me on this. That's an appeal for emotional reassurance. But the analytical mind, it's not looking for reassurance, it's asking for evidence. Their silent, constant question is always, prove it to me. And this is probably the single most important shift in perspective you can possibly make. The pushback you're getting is not a personal rejection of you or your relationship. It is an impersonal request for more data. They're not saying, I don't trust you. They're saying, my brain needs more information to make this make sense. So how can you actually use this knowledge? Let's talk about reframing that resistance and turning what feels like a conflict into a really productive, collaborative conversation. Okay, so what can you actually do differently? Here's the playbook. First, always present the why behind your what. Don't just give them a conclusion, show them how you got there. Second, offer data, not just directives. Facts, evidence, logical steps, that's the language they speak. Third, and this one is huge, welcome their questions. See them as a sign that they're engaged, not defiant. They're trying to understand, not to undermine you. And finally, you gotta detach your ego from the outcome. Their final decision is about the logic, not a reflection on you. So the next time you're trying to give advice to that brilliant, stubborn person in your life, just remember this. It's almost never about ego. It's all about logic. And with that understanding, how will you change the conversation? What data are you going to bring to the table?